Do we have World War III coming through in this joint right now? What's going on? Trump is getting real trigger happy. We have these posts right here that were literally posted about like half an hour ago, 30 minutes ago. Satellite photos show aftermath of U.S. targeting Iran's nuclear sites. The title says enough. This is my first long format video I'm even watching about this situation with the war that's going on. I've seen a lot of clips, just scrolling, but long format, let's really get the details.
Begin this hour with the U.S. targeted strike on 3 Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. President Donald Trump sent shockwaves across the world after posting, quote, "A full payload of bombs was dropped." The move marks a significant escalation as the U.S. joins the conflict between Israel and Iran. And this is what we know so far. The Defense Department confirms the mission, called Operation Midnight Hammer, included 7 B-2 Spirit bombers. Those bombers left the Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to Iran on Saturday. Another group of the same bombers flew over the Pacific to act as decoys. The lead B-2 aircraft dropped 2 bunker buster bombs on Fordo. And you can see some of the aftermath from the strike on Fordo in these satellite images from Maxar Technologies. Several of the tunnel entrances that lead into the underground facility were blocked with dirt following the airstrikes. Large diameter craters can also be seen on top of a ridge over the underground complex. We want to note the Trump administration says this is not an act of war. Iran quickly launched another missile strike on Tel Aviv hours after Trump announced his targeted attack on Iranian nuclear sites. At least 18 people were injured in the latest attack seen here. The two sides are now entering their 11th day of exchanging fire. Israeli forces
How many people did she say? Like 15 people were injured?
18 people were injured in the latest attack seen here. The two sides are now entering their 11th day of exchanging fire. Israeli forces continue their strikes on Iran this morning. Officials say they struck the heart of Tehran by focusing on regime headquarters. The Israeli military also says they are now targeting Iran's notorious Evin prison. Now, back here in the States, President Trump continues to defend his decision to carry out this weekend strike. He also similarly suggested a regime change on social media. His post yesterday said, quote, "It is not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't they be a regime change?" Secretary of State Marco Rubio tried to cool down those comments on Face the Nation just yesterday. Take a listen.
So therefore, are you actually looking for regime change?
Well, that misses the point.
Bro, the news just freaking fails me every time. Every time. I don't know what the hell a regime change is, but why are we over here arguing about this when niggas is dropping bombs on each other? Bro, there's literally bombs being dropped out of the sky on countries. And they're about to argue over a specific term, bro. This shit doesn't fail me. Like, you have to understand, they here just making content out of the situation. Also, they will argue. They will make anything a controversy, bro. Anything.
I don't like that they chant those things, but one thing is that they chant those things. Another thing is that they chant those things and they have terror proxies are all over the world, and they have long-range missiles that can reach the United States one day, and they have the potential to be one step away from a nuclear weapon. Yeah, well, one day could be tomorrow, could be a week from now, could be a month from now. All it takes is the flip of a switch. By the way, they're not going to broadcast that to the world. By the time we figure out that they're doing it, you have all the pieces in place, okay? It's like you have a gun here and the ammunition. It only takes 1 second. We have other targets.
Is anyone watching this video scared? Do you feel fear because of what's going on right now? Comment down below. Make sure you do watch till the end, because I want to tell you something.
So we could hit, but we achieved our objective.
CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang will join us in just a moment with more from the White House and the response. First, let's bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams from Iraq. Holly, thanks for joining us today. There seems to be a lot of confusion about whether there was any damage at Fordo. So what do we know, and do we have an idea if any enriched uranium was actually at that site?
Good morning, Mugo. Well, those B-2 stealth bombers seem to have done their work, at least judging by the bomb craters that seem to be evident in satellite imagery. There's a kind of triumphal tone coming from Washington, I think. President Trump called those strikes a, quote, spectacular military success. And then the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Now, despite that, Iranian state media has claimed that stockpiled uranium was actually moved away from those nuclear sites before the US strikes, and not just Fordo, the site that's been getting so much attention and that is or was fortified. Now, we cannot independently verify those claims from Iranian state media, but we spoke to one Middle Eastern security expert who found it plausible that the Iranians were able to move at least some of their stockpiled uranium. And then on Face the Nation...
Bro, the way Trump is talking, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of like he's been waiting to do this right here. It says monumental damage was done to all nuclear sites in Iran, as shown by satellite images. Obliteration is an accurate term! Exclamation mark. The white structure shown is deeply embedded into the rock, with even its roof well below ground level and completely shielded from flame. The biggest damage took place far below ground level. Bullseye. Bro, the way he said that bullseye right there is like he's just throwing darts and having fun.
From Iranian state media, but we spoke to one Middle Eastern security expert. And then on Face the Nation yesterday, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked how much nuclear material was moved prior to the attack. And he said, quote, no one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it. Now, one thing to consider is that despite all of the Iranian nuclear scientists who've been targeted and killed by Israel and then these US strikes, there's the possibility that Iran will want to rebuild what it has lost. And one Iranian lawmaker seemed to speak to that in a social media post over the weekend, saying, quote, knowledge cannot be bombed.
So, Holly, there is the big question, though, of what happens next now.
Right, that is a very big question. US forces here in the Middle East, including here in Iraq, are on high alert, bracing for a possible Iranian retaliation or retaliation from one of the several militia groups that Iran backs in this region. But I think big picture, there are a few possibilities. The first is that Iran capitulates and gives up its nuclear program. That is clearly what President Trump is hoping for. The second is that the Iranians double down and say to themselves, you know, these attacks prove that we need to be able to better defend ourselves, and they're more motivated than before to produce nuclear weapons. Now, of course, Mugo, they could do both. They could publicly try and find a diplomatic solution and then in secret try and rebuild their nuclear program. Then there's that social media post that you highlighted earlier where President Trump seemed to raise the possibility of regime change in Iran. We don't know how serious he was, and the White House said he was simply raising the question. But as you'll remember, engineered regime change here in Iraq and in Afghanistan led the US into a quagmire, costing the United States both blood and treasure.
Imminent threat of Iranian strike on U.S. airbase in Qatar.
Less than an hour from now, President Trump expected to meet with his national security team inside of the White House. That as we learn of new warnings from U.S. sources to Fox of an imminent Iranian strike on a U.S. base in Qatar. In fact, it was the very same base that President Trump spoke at during his trip to the Middle East. Now, this is where the United States has its largest airbase in the Middle East, and Qatar has closed its airspace until further notice. You can look at the flight radar. There are literally no flights above Qatar right now. And the State Department is instructing all Americans to shelter in place. We are learning more about America's historic strike against Iran in the meantime. And new details are emerging about this weekend, how the U.S. carried out a highly precise airstrike mission that successfully took out 3 of Iran's most important.
Qatar.
I had to look it up, fam. I had to look it up. Because either I was saying it wrong or she was saying it wrong. It's Qatar. So they said Qatar on live TV. It's got 2 million views in 6 hours.
Nuclear sites, you've heard them by name, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. And now President Trump is calling for peace.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
The president hailing the mission on Truth Social, writing, quote, monumental damage was done to all nuclear sites in Iran as shown by satellite images. Obliteration is an accurate term. And the Pentagon revealing just how unprecedented the mission actually was.
The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time.
This was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military.
This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-hosts Emily Campagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Tudor Dixon, former GOP gubernatorial candidate and host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, and Brian Kilmeade, Fox & Friends co-host, host of the Brian Kilmeade radio show, and host of One Nation with Brian Kilmeade. Well, first, let's go to Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin, who joins us live from the Pentagon. Jennifer.
Kayleigh, significant intelligence warnings focused on Qatar right now, where the U.S. has its largest air base in the Middle East. Concerns that Iran will fire short or medium-range cruise and ballistic missiles or swarming drones at the U.S. base at Al Udeid. Satellite images show that the U.S. moved most of their unhangared aircraft out of Al Udeid last week, but still this could be a tempting target for Iranian retaliation. Embassies across Doha, the capital, have ordered their workers and their employees evacuated, and for those who remain to shelter in place.
People be worried about aliens and UFOs. We need to be worrying about what the hell is this? This joint look like it's from Avatar or something. Never seen such an object, bro. Look at the way that is. I wonder how much space they have on the inside. Or if the only space is literally just right here and it's just like, bro, those look wild. Like they literally look like something like just like an action figure, but like of a spaceship. That joint is wild, bro. What the hell? But we have all this war stuff going on, which is crazy. Bombs are being dropped, but you always have to remember at the end of the day, you shouldn't fear anything but God. No man, no situation, nothing at all, because it's only God that quiets the storm. And if it's not out here in the world, it's at least mentally for yourself. You feel what I'm saying? So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one.